Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So today we have an amazing panel of professors and alumni that are working in the game industry. And the topic that we are going to discuss is going to be the position of women in the industry and basically like how they are represented. Career advices. All our alumni have wonderful careers as women. They just recently entered the industry, and I'm sure that they have plenty of stories and advices and tips to share. I wanted to introduce my wife, Celeste Guichard. Celeste Guichard is a professor of architecture history. She's also a gamer. She finished with me Baldur's Gate 3. She's replaying The Witcher, and she is a big fan of Dragon Age Inquisition. She also shipped 2 games, a VR game called and I don't remember the name now. It's
well, we didn't ship Dialect Effect.
Go for it.
Oh, and I've recently worked on a SCAD Pro with a game on learning about the French Revolution, which was packaged and shipped for the company, which is really although most of that work was the students. So congratulations to the students on that. Right, and for myself, I just my roles covered everything pretty much. So.
Liana, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. My name's Liana. I'm based out of Waco, Texas. I'm currently a 3D character artist for an indie company called Morning Crescent Games. We're working on our first title. And yeah, I'm relatively fresh to the industry. I graduated just in 2022, had only 1 contract job before I started working at Morning Crescent. And here comes my cat, Bolero. Yeah.
Awesome. Sofia, do you want to take over?
Sure. So my name's Sofia. I'm based in Atlanta right now, remotely. But I work as an environment artist for Combat Waffle Studios, which is a VR studio. We're currently working on 2 development titles. And yeah, this is also actually my first job after I graduated in June. Yeah. Last year.
Kelly.
Hello, I'm Kelly. I'm based in North Carolina in Raleigh. Apologies if you hear dogs barking in the background. I am currently working at Epic Games as an asset implementer on the physics team for Lego Fortnite. I graduated from SCAD just last year. In the summer after I graduated, I interned at Blizzard. And then, yeah, started at Epic in January of this year. So that's me.
Dana.
All right. Can you hear me okay? Cool. Hi, I'm Dana. I'm a UX designer on Valorant at Riot Games. This is my 3rd job, I guess, in the industry. I graduated in 2019, and I'm based in LA.
Monica.
I graduated with Dana in 2019. I'm currently at Rec Room. I've been here for almost 4 years. It is kind of like awesome, and it's also a VR game. And before that, I was in themed entertainment, which was also a lot of fun. But yeah, passion in games for sure. And my secret mission is to add more cute animals to games. So that's sort of what I'm doing here.
Awesome. And Sana.
God, I am so old. Okay, so I graduated from SCAD. Hi, I'm Sana. I graduated from SCAD in 2015. So it says that I'm working at Skybound, and that's kind of true. I was a background painter on seasons 2 and 3 of Invincible. Then I got laid off, but I asked him to put it there anyway because I might get that job back soon. Right now, I'm currently freelancing for Roblox games through a company called Super League as a concept artist, and a concept artist on another project that I can't really talk about. Before that, I was actually at Rooster Teeth Productions for 5.5 years. R.I.P. Rooster Teeth. And I also like cute animals in games, so put more of those in games. Thank you.
Who doesn't? Okay, thank you, everybody. I think, Celeste, I'm going to shut up now and let you take over.
Okay, well, I won't speak much either. So just in advance, we just have like a list of a few questions that everyone who has who's here today is going to discuss. So I'll ask the question, just have a good discussion about it, and then we'll shift to others. And generally speaking, the questions cover both the direction of games today in terms of gender and inclusivity, and also questions about being a woman working in the gaming industry. So for the first question, what is your perspective on current debates about game content and gender? And some things to consider is the recent diversity of gender depictions here to stay, and to what degree does resistance to more diverse depictions of gender affect your work? So.
I think I'll go ahead and kick this one off. I don't know if people saw recently, but a new hero came out for Overwatch 2 that is canonically non-binary. And I was there for a little bit while that character was in development, and that kind of thing. One, it's great when people on the team share in that diversity and that perspective and that experience, but also it's so important, and I think a lot of companies are recognizing this, that you want to bring in like sensitivity experts and people that can consult on doing those representations properly and respectfully. And I mean, people love it. People love that character. I think, fans of those games want to see more of that kind of thing, especially ones that can identify with that experience. They want to see themselves in the games they're playing. I think that's super important, and I truly hope it sticks around for sure.
I kind of feel like the trajectory of representation is following a similar trajectory as accessibility in games. And a lot of it has been pioneered by the industry. And now we're seeing a time where bigger companies are starting to take a hold of it and build momentum, because we had Cyberpunk dig really deep into having gender like fluidity and gender expression options. And then recently Larian Studio really dug hard into that. And now, as Kelly mentioned, Overwatch, a big company, is starting to bring that in as well. So in a similar note to the accessibility trajectory, I feel like it's only going to keep going, because accessibility features have only become more and more mainstream. And I think gender representation is only going to become a broader gender representation spectrum is only going to become more and more mainstream too.
I'd agree. I think that I've found that the debate on gender in games, both the diversity within the development studios, as well as the diversity that we show in our playable characters and NPCs, tends to be largely over-exaggerated in social media. And as someone who's chronically online, I think it's easy to get mixed up in that, especially if it's your game, right? And it's easy to take those comments to heart. But usually it's like the most vocal 5% of people that their voices are being amplified on a platform. So it's important to remember that and take that into context when we see backlash on these kinds of issues. It's not necessarily a reflection of the inside of the industry. As Liana and Kelly have said, a lot of it is change from the inside out. And we're starting to see the waves, both positive and negative, that it's making on our audiences. And I don't see it regressing anytime soon.
I do think the current trajectory is going to keep going, and this might be better for the Riot girl to talk about, but I remember Riot released a survey of League of Legends players, and they asked like, who do you main? They asked guys and girls, who's your main? And then guys were actually pretty varied over genders, but most girls who played League mostly played girl characters. I think it was like 93% their main was a girl. So they kind of pointed out that like by adding more girls, this is actually more adding a feature or like a buy-in for more women to play our game, and if it's one thing that CEOs who don't care about inclusivity want, it's money, and these decisions often just give more money. And I know that's like a cynical way to put it, but I do think it is important to remember, because being exclusive and only appealing to like macho men and white men, it actually isn't economically smart to do, because you're just leaving huge like audiences on the table and their money on the table. So in addition to just it mattering to people, it also makes money. Apologies, that's the cynical way to put it, but I do think it is important to take into account why it's going to stay, because I mean, you've seen like the current whiny people about a lot of games, and sometimes you go to their Twitter profile and they don't even play the game they're whining about, you know, like they really don't matter. So
Yeah, for better or worse, I think money talks, and especially for bigger companies, they look less at whatever upset is happening on Twitter and more about how players are reacting to it in game, and if whatever it is either sells well or is used often. So that kind of metric is a much bigger indicator on if a company will continue to put out diverse content.
Mhm.
I also think oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Monica. Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to slightly change the topic a little bit. So if you had something to add to this particular, okay, I was going to say like Rec Room doesn't release characters or have these large updates, but as a company, we don't really identify clothing to gender. So when we decide what kind of outfits to make, a large part of my job is like making clothing, which is how we make money because the game is free. We say what gender expression does it lean towards. We don't try to gender clothing. We don't say this is like a male's outfit or a female's outfit. We just say like the gender expression leans male or leans female or is neutral. And I think like as a company deciding that clothes don't have gender has been really helpful moving forward and lets us kind of explore clothing as just an accessory and more as an artful creation rather than like what demographic are we applying to or trying to get to wear this outfit. And I think our player base has responded really well because since we don't gender the clothing, we will have players very creatively combine items that might have been more for a female or more for a male, regardless of their presenting gender.
I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, I think that that's very awesome too. Oh, that's great. I know Sophia wanted to say something, but while I know you're you're taking a second, I did have just one question to follow up in the meantime on what Kelly mentioned. So have others of you had the experience where a sensitivity expert is brought in to talk to the team generally? Is that like a current practice that's happening today? Okay, that's great. Okay, Sophia, you ready?
Oh, no. I
I
don't
had a
remember-
point when you and Monica were.
Oh,
pretty- Go ahead.
what was I going to say? Oh, yes. Everybody had mentioned the how strong of a factor money is and profits. And I mean, the percentage of gamers is pretty even, not evenly, but it's pretty evenly distributed between male and female gamers. So what is happening, as they've said, is that a minority has become so vocal in a echo chamber that is Twitter or X, whatever, and Instagram and all these other social medias, because it's an echo chamber, it just repeats itself. But the actual pool of gamers, the audience, that is varied, and so the industry is realizing that they have to be varied as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. It seems like there's two parallel things where there maybe isn't as much drama about inclusivity in games as those echo chambers would have us believe. So we can move on to the next point. And this is more, well, everything that you've been discussing is about, what is happening in your experience of work at the moment. In terms of negotiating your own path in your career, so have you used yourself or have you observed in other people like good tips and techniques for presenting ideas at your company? Because there are a lot of passionate voices, certainly, and less so now, but historically, socially, women were less likely to get their ideas out there in a really, really confident way. And so if you could speak to that a little bit, that would be great.
Yeah, so I kind of have a good story and like a bad story in regards to this. So at my previous company, my friend and I, who is also a girl, were very convinced that Marmoset was really going to help our pipeline. We often worked with clients that were not very technically advanced, and it would be very helpful to be able to export a viewer and basically rotate around it without having to download anything else. It took us months. We like had compiled research. We would try and get meetings. We would constantly bring it up. And then on the very first day that this guy was hired, he sits down and he goes, "Do you guys have Marmoset?" And they're like, "No, should we get it?" And we got it that day. And it had been like 6 to 9 months of, I had like data like compiled. And I just remember like taking it very personally. But I think that the thing is, if you're in a bad environment, there is not much you can do to unfortunately change the minds of the people in charge. And I unfortunately believe that there are still toxic teams and toxic companies out there. I have never had to fight at all to be heard at Rec Room. Even when I was brand new, like I was involved in conversations that were fairly important because they were like, there's no reason why, just because you're new, your opinions wouldn't matter or your ideas wouldn't matter. And so I think that it's very easy to like catastrophize and be like, oh gosh, this is, because that was my first industry experience really. And I was like, oh man, it's not as good as I had hoped. But after leaving, it's a complete different experience. So another thing is I realized, unfortunately, that the male voice held a much higher weight at that company. So kind of what I did was I went to my lead, who agreed that it was toxic. And we kind of had like a little system where in a meeting, if he heard that an idea that I had was sort of talked over, he would repeat it with credit, which is very important. The credit part is important because at first he was simply repeating the idea that I said, and they'd be like, "Great job, that's such a good idea. You're so smart." And then I DM'd him and was like, "Hey, this is really great. I'm really happy that you're being an ally and standing up for me, but please remember that it is my idea and now everyone up top thinks it's your idea." So finding like ways that you can leverage that with somebody that you trust. I think the important part is also credit though, because you don't want that going missing. But yeah, stay positive because there are really, really good like companies and teams out there.
I like hard agree with almost everything Monica said. I feel like you took half my answer for me, but in the same way, I haven't really had any trouble with presenting ideas because of my gender, but more due to my lack of experience at previous roles. And just in general, I'm not a very assertive person. So when it comes to making sure that I'm heard, it depends a lot on how willing people are to listen. And so I found that that's a lesson that you need to take to heart and implement when you're interviewing, because it is as much an interview for them as it is for you. And so gauging how receptive they are to listening to you, do they talk over you? How do they treat new talent? That kind of thing. Is one of the things that I think is really important and can help you find the right role and a studio that you feel comfortable at.
And this might be a little negative to roll off those two, but there's also a time I think learn when you should let it go. Because I have massive experience with this, very similar to Monica's, where at good old Rooster Teeth, we had the worst matte painting pipeline of all time in Genlock. It was terrible. I spent probably a year or two getting it fixed, dragging these producers kicking and screaming. I don't care that Nuke is $10,000. You're spending 2 weeks on a matte painting. That is not acceptable. You're spending more in labor. You're probably spending $10,000 in labor costs that you would be saving by just getting this one program. I actually had to go to a different producer to help me. I got talking to for being mean. I got denied a raise for being mean. You know, one of my male employees called me a pig-headed idiot, but you know what? They switched to Nuke and saved a lot of time, right? But at the same time, I think back and I'm like, okay, we did fix it, but it was so much effort and the company's closing down now anyway. So in the end, it's like, you know, whatever. And I also kind of agree that some teams are just horrendously toxic and there are some people who are just never going to respect you however much you try. So just if sometimes it's a good point just to decide you want to do this horrible pipeline. Fine, it's your company. Go have fun. You know what I mean? Now there are some things I did fight more for that. I mean, not harder than that, but things I would have stood my ground on more. And that's kind of where the allies can come in, because there was like example, like one really offensive thing that thankfully didn't make it into Genlock, and the director was like, hard, I want this sign in Genlock. Basically, it was a sign that said something, but like from a distance, which is where you're going to be viewing it, it looked like it said a slur. And I'm like, we can't put this in the show because it looks like a slur. And he's like, but it's not a slur. I'm like, it doesn't matter, it looks like one. And thankfully I had little buddies to help me fight with that, because that's like when I was going to stand hard on, and thankfully it was bad enough it didn't go through. But again, like if something is just more trouble than it's worth, and you were stressing out and you were spending months or even years trying to fix it, just be like, let them fail. You know, they want to fail, this is their decision. Yeah. Your mental health is more important than any pipeline in a video game. Just throwing it out there.
I guess there's a point where you're hitting your head against a brick wall, as it were. Just a quick follow-up on Dana, your point. In terms of the teams that you work with, do you feel that there's a good diversity across the board, essentially, or are the upper levels of management, are they still do they still have room to grow, let's say, in better representation of the gaming community, that kind of thing?
Got it. I think it largely depends on the team. For example, newer disciplines like UX are very diverse. I think we're at a 60-40 split female to male on Valorant. Our, like, I don't know what she's called. I just say she owns Valorant, but I don't actually know her title. But like the person in charge of Valorant is female. Her name is Anna Donlan. She does a lot of really great talks as well. It's hard to talk to management in the context of Riot because it is a little bit more horizontal. And so there are very few people I can point at and say, that's management. But there are definitely, I'd say, a diverse amount of executives. It could be better at a higher level, but I think it's also partially that that stigma has kind of carried with age. And so in 30 years, when all of us are in those positions, maybe or maybe not, I don't really want to be a manager, you're probably going to see more diversity, where I think a lot of women have been pushed out and other genders have been pushed out of the industry over time. So just generally, statistically, there are less of them in management because of that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah. And it makes sense. It's interesting to know about UX. It's greater diversity there. Okay, all right, we can move on to the next one. In terms of actually, moving up the ladder or getting on the ladder to begin with. So in your experience, do you have any, well, there might be a chat comment. Oh, right. In terms of questions in chats, how did you want to handle that? Do you want to answer questions as they come in or save them to the end?
Yeah, you're absolutely free to ask in chat. Towards the end, when we roll out, we'll open the questions to the public, and I can either read them from the chat or you can ask them in person. It depends on how many we have. If we don't have that many, I would rather have you guys ask the questions in person. If we have many, then I'll take over. But let's go over the panel first. That way nobody's interrupted, and then we'll keep the questions at the end.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds good. Okay, right. So contract negotiations. This is another one of those in terms of getting, well, assertiveness, essentially, which is has conditionally been something that women have been less encouraged to be as assertive. Seems like Sana might have been called mean.
Well,
my experience of you as a student. So let's start maybe with Well, I'll just open up contract negotiations in terms of either positioning yourself for a promotion, if you are interested in, being more of a leader on the teams, or positioning yourself just to work on a particular project. So if you have any suggestions on what worked for you, what were some challenges for you, it'd be great to hear those.
I know of this one in my long tenure in the industry. Anyway, I kind of, okay, I'm going to start negative but end positively because like I said, Rooster Teeth, very toxic company. I remember I was the lowest paid on the team for probably 4 years. I was paid like 20,000 under the next dude on the team. And this is kind of where dudes can kind of be an ally because I know people don't really like sharing their financial business, but sharing your salaries amongst the team, you don't have to share in public, but just your team in general, knowing what everyone's paid and what their experience level is, incredibly useful tool for negotiating. Because that's something the company wants to hide, because if they do that, then that's how they can get like the $50,000 like or even hundreds of thousands of dollars pay range on the team. Anyway, so just being open to discussing that is good. Anyway, and I remember learning this information over Genlock, and I discussed this with my bosses for about 9 months to try and get me a raise, and in the end, they told me we don't got money for you, and I'm like, well, sir, I know how much money was handed out in raises on my team because I talked to them, and then like his face just went like, uh-oh, you know what I mean? And that's when I went to HR and got my raise. But going more positively, and that's me describing my Joker moment in the industry, in that I kind of live by the phrase, do no harm, but take no shit. I think it's very natural for girls to want to be demure and nice and try and play things by the book. Like that was a big difference I noticed between how the guys at the company behaved and how the girls behaved, because the girls wanted to follow all the rules and the guys were just do it and ask forgiveness later. And I do think there's a truth to that, in that just be assertive, be firm, don't be unreasonable. But if you have the pay data, you know what you should be paid, and these people aren't going to listen to you being nice anyway, then just go forward. Especially when you're getting a job offer at first, companies are going to want to lowball you. Like if you name a range, they're going to give you the lowest number. Name a higher number every time, because they're going to negotiate down. And that's how you get the good money. And now I've been making good money even at my freelance jobs while laid off, So that's my advice. Just again, be assertive, don't be mean, but don't try and make yourself small. Like, show your achievements and why you deserve this raise. Like, don't be like a bragger and a jerk, but like there's no reason to minimize your contributions. Like, put yourself forward. Yeah.
This
My
is
advice.
kind of a non-traditional answer, but I would say just leave. And there's a reason for that, I promise. So one, if you just are not the kind of person that feels comfortable with negotiating, and this is in the case of specifically raises and promotions, honestly, even if you're successful with the raise or promotion, you're unlikely to get more than a small amount of money. But you can have a huge jump in salary if you go to a new studio and then come back, right? As an example, if you start at 60K at your dream studio, it would probably take you, and this is like just based on my experience from what I've seen, I don't know, 5 to 10 years to get to 80, right? That's a 20K increase over a decade. Whereas if you start at a studio that isn't your dream studio, but offers you 75, you go to another studio a year after that to make 80, then apply to your dream studio again. That's about 2 years time, and they'll have to offer you 80 at a minimum, right? So this is just something that I would recommend for anybody, not just marginalized genders, but I recommend it. I was able to double my salary this way in 2 years, so it works.
I think something you said earlier, Dana, really stuck out to me. When you said, like, for interviews, it's your chance to also kind of interview the company, right? And so the things you really want to be asking about are like team culture. That informs all of that other stuff we've talked about, and like kind of how you generally feel like you're going to be treated and what kind of voice you're going to have in the environment. And also like ask about what the growth potential is with them. If they're kind of asking you things like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like, what do you want to be doing down the line? They're interested. And, you know, that's your opportunity to say, this is what I'm looking for. This is where I want to be. And, you know, if they want to hire you, they'll take that very seriously. And, you know, also, yeah, if you're getting a better offer somewhere else, that's something to bring up. That's something that, you know, is worth saying, hey, I like this other company, might go here. That might just be better for my financial situation. And that usually kind of pulls some strings and gets some people moving. So you really like, you want to be confident and like play on your experience. And you also just want to play every card you have. And just really try to like advocate for yourself, because no one else is going to do it for you.
Slightly more positive note. I also, when I worked at my previous studio, when I left, I made a lot more money. They were never going to give me more money, no matter how many times I asked. So I 100% agree with sometimes you just have to leave. But at my current one, I had noticed, because on the art team, we try to be fairly open with each other. I had noticed that the person I was onboarding was making more money than I was. And I was like, huh, that doesn't quite make sense since I'm training them. And so I had asked why to my art director. And we basically realized that all of the people who had joined when Rec Room was very small started at a lower rate because we were basically an indie company. And then we got funding. And then the new people, the recruiting team started putting the newer people at a higher start. And it wasn't an intentional slip up, but basically what Dana said, like it's very slow increases versus like a large jump. And they realized that we weren't catching up because it was slow increases. So they basically were like, we're going to do some market research and get back to you. And then they actually like adjusted properly. They made back what we should have gotten if we started now. So it was like a huge win. I was genuinely shocked that like it worked. So sometimes getting like a team together to present your case, if you see that it's sort of like a trend, like if every woman is underpaid, HR concern, you know, if every new person is making more money, that's also kind of a concern. So pretty much echoing what Dana said earlier, and I'm pretty sure other people said as well, just knowing who to trust and who to talk to and kind of corroborating on that.
I have one more thing if no one else has anything. Sorry. This is a little bit further in the long game, but something that I've realized more lately than when I first broke into the industry that is still important to ask even when you're just starting out and applying for jobs, is to understand what promotion tracks look like at each studio. And the reason for that is sometimes promotions only mean you can be somebody's manager. Sometimes it takes you away from those day-to-day responsibilities that you're used to, that you were trained for, that you went to school for, and that's not for everybody. And especially for women, it can feel more stressful to be a manager, right? And also have to balance all of the different things that people can assume about you with being good at your job. So something that I would also recommend is asking about promotion tracks. This is something I'm not super familiar with. Like I can't point to each studio and tell you how it works, but something that I like a lot about Riot is that we actually have 2 promotion tracks, one for discipline and one for management. So you can still be promoted and stay just doing, like in my case, like wireframes all day. And you can get in, there's like multiple as well. So it's not just like a single one, or you can go and you can get into management and you can kind of take a step back and help mentor other people. And I like that that's an option because personally, I just don't feel ready to mentor anybody. I don't know if I ever will. So I just want to kind of do my own thing. And I'm happy that that's something I can do and still get promoted for.
I wanted to add a little to that because I think Riot makes this clean when they're naming the job roles, where it's like UI artist 1, UI artist 2, UI artist 3. But then if you see some companies that have very city job titles like senior advanced concept director or like senior super advanced UI artist, those companies are also ones that will promote you on like not a managerial track. That's why the titles are like that. It's to like give a senior person a promotion, but not put them into management. But I do find the titles kind of funny. So
Oh, and at a bad studio, you might still be doing the work of double.
oh,
So
yeah.
you would be being manager and also the person on the ground, and they just would pay you the same amount, right? So you don't want that either.
Yeah.
Senior super advanced. That sounds
Look at certain affinities job titles. They're so funny.
yeah, that sounds like fool's gold, but very shiny for sure. So yeah, speaking about the communication, which is great, and I found that in my work as well, just communicating, making sure everyone knows what's happening in the department and what everyone's responsibilities are and compensations are, can be really helpful. And so on that track, have you found, obviously you've all spoken about, networks and networking within your company, just to make sure that you're comfortable and that you're having an enriching, rewarding work experience. Are there other networks that you find helpful? Like support systems that are, I mean, we all have our support systems generally in life, but in terms of like professionally, are there any, blogs that you go to or any sort of, other support systems, even within your own company that you find particularly helpful, even if it's just like learning, more about the way things work and about people's experience?
A couple big ones are like broad global networks or partially global networks, like Pixels is a big one. I think they're based out of Montreal. And there's Girls Who Code, there's Black Girls Who Code. They're pretty accessible if you know where to look. But there are generally a lot of like online networks of, women working in just tech overall or games specifically. That you can connect with those people on LinkedIn, and they're always super friendly, and they've usually got in their bio like founder of Pixels or something. There's actually a really cool GDC talk from I think 2016 about kind of women in games initiatives and those programs, and like on one of the slides in that presentation, there's just a whole spread of all of these networks that exist and all of these programs. So they are there. And I can speak to my experience too with the companies I worked for having kind of internal networks for different groups. Like there might be a group for queer employees or a group for just women or that kind of thing. So it's definitely something that is super accessible at this point, which is awesome.
So, I forget who in my class said this. So if you're watching this and I'm stealing your line, I'm sorry. I don't remember your name. But I think also ultimately this is kind of why people say like be nice, because I find like your students at SCAD, that's probably going to be your strongest network for a while, and like your fellow classmates are gonna be like your tight-knit group, at least until you break in and then get that job, right? Because like people say, run around a GDC, run around here, and that's not wrong, but like what's probably going to happen is your best classmate is going to get a job, and then they're going to help you, and then you're all going to get jobs, but they're not going to want to help you if you're mean. So be nice to your fellow SCAD student. And I mean, like, that's how I got my first job, was someone in my studio class recommended me, so, and I'm very thankful to them.
Yeah, I think I didn't really take this message to heart. Not that I was mean in college, but like I was like, yeah, probably when they would say that it's SCAD. Mainly because I thought maybe it was like a college thing, like you should come to SCAD because your peers will get you jobs and stuff. But it is very true. I think especially the first couple years, but even further out from that, you'll find that it's most easy to point to another studio and say, oh, I know I went to class with that person. And those are your strongest connections for a long time. So get to know everybody, be nice. Oh, there was one other thing, not to bring the mood down. Sometimes women are not supportive of other women. So if something doesn't feel right in your gut, don't go further. Don't progress further. I think it's uncommon, but it still happens. So just be aware, I guess.
Yeah, good point. No one is by default going to be supportive and nice, certainly. So Kelly did share the link to, I'm sure everybody saw it, but just in case you haven't, the link to the GDC talk that she was referring to. So I'm going to shift it back to Cyril for questions, but before we do that, any last minute thoughts or points that might have come up just during the conversation?
If it's all right, I want to pitch just one more like kind of inclusivity network. And maybe people have heard of this because I've seen a lot of SCAD students in this Discord server, but it's called the House of Peeps. And it's a Discord server that's like very intentionally geared towards inclusivity and just like creating a positive environment where you can share portfolios, there are job postings. And I think kind of like the social and the emotional support aspect of networking is important, as well as like the practical aspect of it. And I think this server does a really good job of being just like uplifting. And let's see if I can get an invite. Somebody else can like tag on and answer while I dig for this invite link, but I just wanted to put that out there while the topic was still fresh. So
yeah, if you could share it in chat, that would be fantastic.
I have a question for Monica. How many how many SCAD students of your promotions are at Rec Room right now?
How about I'll even tell you how many are of the same graduating class. So 2019, it's me, Skipper, Shelby, Caitlin, Kristen. So that's 5. And then we have our lead concept artist who graduated from SCAD, I think 2017. And then like a producer as well. So it's kind of crazy. Pretty much most of our team, we call ourselves the Scatty Baddies. It's really great. And I was shocked, Dana, to kind of echo what you said about how genuinely applicable the network is. I thought like, yeah, I have my close friends, but apart from that, it won't help me much. Completely untrue. The amount of SCAD people in the industry everywhere. Like I moved to Seattle and immediately had a network, immediately had a friend group. At this point, like pretty much any studio in the area, I know who from SCAD is at those studios. Like it's kind of insane in a way that like you wouldn't have expected when you're in college. But it is a huge resource and very helpful.
One that actually touched my heart in this way. I'm probably the only sequential major here. Everyone thought I was game design because I wanted to go into games, so I hung around that building, but I was actually sequential because I wanted to do concept art. But anyway, there's like this one professor named Tom Lyle, who was a very long time professor at SCAD, and he worked at like on like Batman and Spider-Man, and he unfortunately died a couple years ago. But like it was kind of insane at my company, like how many people knew Tom Lyle, you know what I mean? Because they all took his classes, right? Like they're everywhere, right? And that was a little sad, but I remember just like, I don't know, like how like people were like coming together because of this one professor, and it touched my heart. And it was also near when Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse released, and one of his designs was like in the movie, and we're like, Professor. So
Scarlet Spider.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a close friend of ours, actually.
He was a dear friend of ours.
Oh, see, there you go.
Okay, Celeste, do you want to continue questions, or should I take over? So we had a question. Eric, do you want to ask a question?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to ask was that what do you guys want in people in leadership positions when it comes to leading in a team? Like, is it like what you expect them to do? They like what they need to show and provide for their team, that sort of thing?
I can kind of take this one. I think that one thing that expectations is that, you know, they would try to be inclusive, try to have everyone's voice heard, try their best in general. But ultimately, if you are not from that background that you are trying to include, you can try your best, but you won't necessarily understand everything. So I think the biggest one actually is creating a comfortable platform for communication and feedback. Because on our team, the amount of times that like there's an understanding that everyone is really well intended, but the amount of times that like I have felt comfortable giving feedback and been like, hey, I noticed that, this week you've really been talking over some people, like maybe a girl might take that kind of personally and think that you're trying to mansplain or like talk over someone. And then the reaction isn't, oh, no, I wasn't doing that at all. Like, I don't remember doing that. It's, I hear you. Like, I will implement that. Like, thank you. It's partially a good leader, I think, makes the person coming forward feel good that they stepped forward rather than getting defensive, rather than trying to reinstate their intentions, which their intentions are clearly good. But that is understood. The impact is different sometimes than the intention. So I think that the main thing is creating an environment where people feel safe communicating and giving feedback.
There's also a lot to be said for just like, if inclusivity is not like an active priority to a leader, it's going to fall to the wayside. Like Monica kind of mentioned, like you can have good intentions and like still like fall short. Sometimes those intentions aren't even a priority at all. And when they're not a priority, that just becomes like a breeding ground for all sorts of biases and roadblocks to sneak in. Like my first contract job, like designing women in a light that wasn't like objectifying or like really, really like cardboard cutouty, really weird proportions, that just was not a priority. It just wasn't important to them. And so when I would like try to design characters that didn't do that, I got I got some friction. And so, and I was one of two. It was a really, really small team. It was like a 7-person team, and I was one of 2 girls on the team, and the other girl was very, very soft spoken. I am not a soft spoken person, but unfortunately, if it's not important to them, it's not important to them. So
I've got 3 points that basically just follow those two. Those 2 points already made was like, one, really make sure that like inclusivity is your priority, and I don't mean just in hiring or whatever. And I'm stealing this line from Tumblr, but it was a very profound post, I promise. That was actually about autism, but this applies like to like everything. Like if you have neurodivergent employees or like a diverse employees, is that really you have to keep looking inward and then see where your biases lie, because very rarely will anyone say, I don't think women can make games, I don't think autistic people can make games or whatever. But they might, but then you look at like, say, how the team's paid, and for some reason they don't think any of the women on their team have enough experience, right? And you're probably not going to change the mind of someone who already has that bias. They kind of have to look internally and realize, oh, I'm underpaying all my women because for some reason I don't think they have enough experience, So just, again, that's sort of where sensitivity training does come in, or like, but I think a lot of it's just you internally. You don't need to know everything. You just need to accept you don't know everything, and then just analyze where your biases lie and do a little bit better each day. And I mean, maybe your biases aren't women. Maybe you just don't like soft-spoken people. Maybe you just don't like loud people, right? Like you just have to look inward and see where you're just treating people unfairly. And I think that was a good point, so I wrote off of that. My second point is learn when to let stuff go. Like, obviously, these are projects, very high profile, high budget projects, but I remember something my art director on Invincible told me. He said some of his first projects, one of his employees said, man, I really like Sean, but I wish he would smile sometimes. And he got like so angry because he was like, I'm this deep misunderstood artist, right? But then like a year later, he realized, oh, I was just nitpicking my employees too much, and does it like, yeah, their green was like 3% off, but like, did the audience notice their green was 3% off? No. And that's not to say be lazy, but it's like, learn when to pick your battles. Like, no one likes being nitpicked and micromanaged, and I think a lot of new leadership in particular has that issue. And it can be exhausting to work with, you know, when you're on revision like 33 and you're like, please just approve it so we can move on. And I do think that lessons is important. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I have another question, Jack. Do you want to ask it?
Yeah, sure. Oh, my camera isn't working. Yeah, I guess my steps or my question was like, you brought up this thing where like there are these problematic, teams or pipelines, and like, yeah, one solution is to leave. But let's say you're committed to this. What steps would be necessary to be fully, inclusive of race, gender? You even brought up like neurodivergency as well, and et cetera. Like, what steps do you think these companies need to take to fully achieve inclusivity?
I can kind of take this.
Yeah, go.
Oh, no, you're right. That previous company where my friend and I had spent all those years, or not years, goodness, months trying to get, felt like years, trying to get Marmoset. Since leaving, I've heard that it's actually improved significantly, and all of it kind of came from one bad egg at the top, and he left, and that allowed other people to take those higher up positions that had better intentions. And so I don't necessarily know how that change comes from the bottom, but I think that a lot of toxicity can come from the top. So I think that either another thing that the company did was moved one of the leads to a different team where he could kind of be more secluded, because he was a very good artist, just wasn't a very good people person. So by kind of changing his role, that really helped. And then also with the guy at the top leaving, that also really helped. So I think that like making sure that the people in leadership positions are the people that should be. And I also think hiring more diverse people too.
I was actually going to say something like that. Which was like my third point for the leadership question. So this answer ties both together, is that culture change does not come from the bottom up. It comes from the top down. So if you're like Monica was saying, if your company is toxic, it's probably one or a lot of people up top. And I have direct experience with this, which is like the entire Rooster Teeth HR team actually completely flipped at one point, except for one lower level employee, just because they're like, this HR team is not working. They're not listening to anybody. We're changing everyone. And it actually did get better. I would say in some ways, they still needed to make money, but it got better in the offensive content thing. But basically, like, for a lot of these older companies like Riot, like Activision, like all this stuff, you're probably not going to be able to change leadership, like a really high up leadership, because they've been there forever. So my recommendation would be, if there's anyone at the company that has like any draw at all to make a change happen, then try and get them to help. Because I would say that big HR flip that happened at Rooster Teeth, this all started with one tweet made by a previous actress named Mika Burton, who said, I didn't leave Rooster Teeth because of the fans. I left because of Rooster Teeth. And that started the whole landslide internally that really did change things for the better, in my opinion. I mean, that's also around when I got higher pay. And then, I mean, and she barely did anything, right? All she did was make that one tweet, right? But she was just the right person at the right time to say something, so especially if you're higher up and you're safe from any backlash, say something. I mean, we're all students here, we're babies, so we're wanting other people to do that, but you know what I mean. I hope so.
Yeah, I think one of the best things you can do is hold leadership accountable. Sometimes you're in a position where there really isn't much that you can do. But definitely one of the more common and successful ways to eliminate toxicity is just for people to leave and for us to bring other people in, especially if they're from outside the game industry. I found like it's good to diversify the pool as well and not only stick to like the same people with the same mindset who've been in the industry for 30 years, right? Something that I found that was really interesting when I got to Riot is I expected it to be pretty bad here. But in the almost 3 years I've been here, I've never felt uncomfortable with anyone, which is a surprise, right? You'd think that I would. And a couple months after I joined, I asked, so hey, like, am I missing something? Is there something? And they were like, well, this was a woman who had been on TFT previously and then was on player platform. So she'd been around about 3 or 4 years at least at that point. So and this was in 2021. So she'd been there. And she's like, well, I think about 60% of rioters from that time period are gone. We had a huge turnover. And a big part of the like hiring rules and mindset was changed and reflected to be more inclusive. And it's not something that they ever publicized, I guess, but you can tell that there's a big difference.
I very much had the same experience kind of going into Blizzard, where like if I told someone I got an internship there's kind of like that little bit of like, are you gonna be okay? And truly like getting there and just meeting the people that were currently there who maybe had only been there for a couple of years. And, you know, other women on the character team and the character team in general, like your team culture and the people you're working with, if they're all kind of elevating each other and giving each other like, you know, a platform to have a voice in the company, it kind of can creep up from the bottom a little bit. You're not gonna like out the CEO of the company or anything like that, but you know, at least in your day-to-day, the people you work with, those are the people you work with. So like I know at Epic, when I just started, one of the producers came up to me and she was so sweet and she was like, you and me and like this other designer in the office, like we're gonna look out for each other. And so kind of keeping people close to you and kind of having that spread, I think really kind of accomplishes a lot in the long run.
I have a question to follow up this. One thing that I'm hearing a lot is speak up, right? Don't let the situation kind of like stale. If you're uncomfortable, if something doesn't work, etc., speak up. But I can also assume that particularly, and that may not be gender related, but if you're young and inexperienced, it's sometimes difficult to kind of like muster the strength to kind of say something. Do you guys have like tips? Do you guys have like techniques on like moving forward, trying to kind of like be soft, meaning like trying to kind of like say something without necessarily making a big splash or making big waves, like and if so, like what are they? I can learn that too.
I definitely have something for this one. Oh, sorry, were you gonna go, Liana?
Oh, I can make it quick if you definitely have
No,
something.
no, it's not that long. Go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say, if you keep things goal oriented instead of people oriented when providing feedback. When you talk about what you want to change, you want to talk about what you want to accomplish and not want about like the person that you don't like or necessarily about what the choice that you don't like. You keep your eye on the target and you keep the conversation about collaboration, and a lot of other stuff is going to fall into place alongside it.
I was just gonna say that like it's okay to depend on others, and if you can try to find someone who's above you, that's great to rely on. I was at Amazon Games for about 9 months, and I had a female manager there who despised me and did everything she could to abuse her power. And when it reached a breaking point, I ended up going to a female producer that was maybe like 8 or 9 years older than me. And I said, hey, this is what's going on. I just feel completely trapped. I don't know what to do. She's the wife of the creative director, so there's nothing I can do to anything to change. What should I do? And so it's okay to go to other people and have them advocate for you or see what's going on. It's a good way to kind of do a soft inquiry, so to speak, without just doing like a hard confrontation, especially because if it's really bad, a lot of these people will react very poorly to being confronted, even if there are, say, non-retaliation policies in place. And it doesn't have
My
to be a
answer is
girl also.
totally. I very much blend what Liana and Dana said in my experience. It's finding people you can trust and the channels through which you can trust. I think knowing who and how to escalate something and when is also very important. And with what Liana was saying about the goal in mind, like this is why I bring this up. It's not just, I'm not gossiping, I'm not trying to like vent, like this is why I bring it up. And I also think certain companies have certain channels. Some people have HR. Rec Group has, we call it the safety valve team, which is people in higher up positions that have agreed to basically be a listening ear without necessarily filing anything after. So if you're like, I'm stuck on this, I genuinely don't know what to do, here's my situation, they will give you advice basically without it being recorded. And then if you want it to escalate after them, they can do that. But it's a really nice kind of like casual way to do it. And I think that if you find people that you can trust to sort of have a similar experience with, in the sense that like, hey, I'm not quite ready to submit anything or like go through a formal channel, but this is sort of my situation. Like, what would you do? Or what's your advice? Like, I think that's very helpful.
Okay, well, thank you.
Oh, I wanted to add one tiny thing. just for this is more for like students, because I think warrior confidence is going to be just getting into the industry at all. And I will bring up an example from my good friend Chelsea, who's here, of a player they had for their game who submitted multiple 5-paragraph essays about this one box they couldn't destroy. And this man was very upset and kept submitting so many essays. And I think about guys like this, and I'm like, do you think that guy cares that he's being a complete freaking embarrassment to himself, writing all these essays about a box? And it's like, no, he doesn't care. So I just now take on that attitude that, like, if you see that job and you're like, I'm not ready, just do it, because that box guy is probably also applying to that job and he'll probably get it just because he did it, just like that clip of Shia LaBeouf plays in my head constantly, of him just saying, just do it, right? Just go. That's my advice.
Good. Is there any other questions in the public before we wrap it up?
I do have one question.
Migo? Oh, sorry. Eric and then Migo. Go for it, Eric.
When it comes to networking, how would you guys suggest when it comes to people nowadays? For me, I'm still struggling trying to talk to random people and trying to like introduce myself, or kind of just in a way just being able to communicate and want to connect. I still struggle with that, but I feel like I'm slowly getting better when it comes to talking. How would you guys suggest when it comes to finding people, talking, and just properly introduced instead of just wandering willy-nilly?
That's a really good question. I think I saw a huge change in my success with networking when I kind of tried to switch from I'm gaining a stepping stone to I'm gaining a friend. I think that like if you have a friend, they will innately help you in the industry, give you advice, give you portfolio advice, all of that. And I think that when I was a student, I was like, I have to have my elevator pitch down. I have to get this person to like me in 2 seconds, and I have to get them to recommend me to whatever job I want. And I think that like that's sort of what is taught a little bit. And I think that to somebody in the industry, it's like, oh, they just want this. It's a very clear thing that they are coming to me for. And I don't want to continue this conversation because I have nothing to offer them, or I don't have any job at my company open. So there's nothing to talk about. But I think if you open it with like, this is like a human connection. And we both have plenty of mutual interests. We both love games. We both love this industry. We're both making art. I think that in time, when something comes up, I'll be like, oh, you know what, that we do have this position and this person was very passionate about this specific thing. Maybe I'll recommend them. And I think that switching from like a exchange to more of just like a friendship, I think is very helpful.
I think the chance of like introducing yourself to someone you don't know, hitting it off, getting a job offer, an interview is so incredibly minusculely low. the reality is it's people that you just happen to encounter and have a friendly interaction with, that you run into through any kind of means. When I was at SCAD, I went to the career fair and I went to the Insomniac booth and I talked with some guy who wasn't a designer, but he was the only guy there. And he was like, yeah, nice portfolio, whatever. He seemed nice, but like they weren't interested. Ran into him on the train in San Francisco to GDC. We hung out for the whole week. Now we're very good friends. And that's like the kind of natural networking that really happens. It's, I guess, a good example of like how to kind of do that without coming off like someone who wants to just like step on other people to get to success. Game dev Twitter is pretty large, and just like following people, interacting with their stuff, like just being friendly. Honestly, it's more about being friendly, and then when there's an opportunity, then because you're slightly familiar or because people know you're not an asshole and you weren't there to just use them for one thing, there's more of a chance that you'll get to actually leverage that opportunity.
And I've got 2 direct instructions that aren't just, you know, being a good person. At industry events, if you are a loner and are shy, this is also one Chelsea told me, is like get one of your friends that is good at networking and does not care and have them lead you around, because they'll break the ice for you because they don't care. So that's a good one for shy people, I think. My second one for shy people is wait in lines. I know it sounds weird, but I've just had a lot of conversations with people waiting in a line. Like I had this nice conversation. So I went to Lightbox and I went to the Riot booth. You wanted to go to the Riot booth because they were giving out posters and stuff. And while I was waiting for my poster, I don't know, I had this nice conversation with like these 2 students, talked about their portfolio, connect on Instagram. You know, it was great.
And Amigo, you had a question?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I miss all of you awesome students. You graduated before I joined and teach alongside with Professor Guichard. My name is Miguel. The only person I know is Sofia. And then she's amazing. She actually came tour all the way from Atlanta to my portfolio class. My questions to all you amazing lady is this. I have as you can see, there are many students here in the meeting room because I make them. They are either in the portfolio class or they are in their capstone project. You are former students, your alumni here are scared. What advice would you give it to them? Because many of them, this is their final quarter. They are about to penetrate the industry. What they expect? Okay. What they have in their portfolio is not a true reflection in their actual ability. And I think a lot of it is due to not their ability, it's actually in their mentality. As you know, as you as a Scale alumni, you're one of the Scale Bs, and you've been there and done that. What would you advise them? Even they cannot come here in the live session for any reasons. What would you say to them if they ever come across this recording and say, "Well, you know what? Your professor touched a good point. Here's what I would advise." Speaking for quote unquote experience. Anyone?
Make stupid, silly stuff that you absolutely love and have fun with it. Because if it's stupid and you love it, then you're gonna want to do everything in your power to execute on it really well. And if you execute on something stupid really well, it's not stupid.
Monica, or maybe.
I have actually weirdly regrets about my project because I took it too seriously, exactly what Liana said. And I think I looked at it backwards. I was trying to think like, what would people want to see in my portfolio, rather than what do I want to make? Because I think now that I'm in the industry, I don't have as much time to make personal art. And my biggest regret was, wow, I had pretty much unlimited time to make a game with my friends. And it could have been anything. And it could have been anything that I wanted to, like an art style that I wanted to make art in that I might not get right out of college. Like, I think that getting a chance to find your voice as an artist in a pretty much like no constraints environment is such a gift that, like, if I could go back, I would totally do it again. And I think that so Kristen was the first person to be hired at Rec Room, and incidentally, got us all here too. And she worked with Dana on Doggone Hungry. And a big thing that the art director said was, we immediately saw Doggone Hungry and knew you understood cute. And it's so hard to teach cute. Like, cute is so hard to communicate, but you guys knew cute. And I think that, like, looking back on it, I was like, that makes so much sense. Like, if you love cute art, put it out there and make the art that you want. That's all I feel.
That's so interesting. Yeah, it's funny that you point to Doggone Hungry because the philosophy behind the game pitch for Doggone Hungry was like, I want to make a game that I know I won't be able to make at any studio. Like, if there's one thing that we can make that's silly and fun and we have the resources, like, I just want to do it while that's still possible. So it's so funny that you say that. It's like you're reading my mind. But I think it shows, and that doesn't necessarily mean make something like completely out there, just because. But I think passion for a project, like true passion, completely shines through in your portfolio, and you can absolutely tell when a game is made with love and when it isn't. It's obviously a little harder for like an artist compared to a designer because our skills are a little bit more transferable from genre to genre, versus like if you really want to get into like realistic hard surface modeling, it's kind of harder to pitch certain types of games for your senior project if it doesn't get you portfolio work. But I do think that not taking it too seriously and doing something that you're going to be able to look back and say, I'm glad we did that. I'm glad that it's out there and we made it, and it's kind of a funny, or at least in my case, like a funny little goofy thing that makes people smile. Like, I'm glad I had the time to do that. That'd be just something I wanted to like follow up on with Monica's advice.
And Dina, I have a question for you. I'm also from Los Angeles. I've been to your studio, Riot. You're a senior producer. So actually, we worked together. At the very my very first game job, it was just a junior producer. So basically, you're my homie. Everyone wants to work for Blizzard and Riot. While everyone thinking about working for AAA games and AAA titles, their studio, their portfolio, they don't have a AAA portfolio. For those who really have a high shot, if not a very long shot, what would your advice? And then this applies to all amazing ladies here. Is what would you advise them and say? You don't want to, we actually, I think we touched something important today is the communication, right? How do you provide that feedback without hurting their feeling? And you know all too well, the industry doesn't care about how you feel, because the rejections is your everyday life. It's just like your appetizer that you just, it's a part of a dessert that you get it every day, right? So what would you say to them if they just, even you look at portfolio review, you were the formal, you were once there, you look at this stuff, just, and that right there is your answer.
Okay. I think I got everything in that. So I guess it's kind of a two-parter question, right? Part of it is like the portfolio that you would use for a AAA company, and then part of it is like something I would give for advice for a student, right, with their portfolio. The truth is, going to Riot, I had almost the exact same portfolio as when I graduated, and that was about 2 years after I graduated, because most stuff was under NDA. I was able to show some stuff in interview, but part of it, at least getting my foot into the interview process, was just luck and timing, which you'll find is actually really common regardless of the job that you're applying for. That being said, in terms of portfolio quality and everything like that, the thing that I found that I'd like to tell people when they ask for portfolio advice is to put yourself in the following scenario. So you're a recruiter, it's a Friday, it's 3 p.m., you have a flight at 7 p.m., you're going on PTO for the next 2 weeks, you have a stack of applications to still look through, and you have to sort them into continue, like, let's do a little more investigation pile, and don't follow up, right? And you have about like an hour really at most to do this. And then you got to pass that on to your coworker. So the question is like, how in that situation does someone make a decision quickly? And the answer is it has to be skimmable. It has to be really easy to find everything they need to contact you. And there can't be a ton of interstitial pages or fancy effects to the point where someone can't understand your work. And it's a lot of documentation, and it's not something that everybody is naturally gifted at. It's a process. It takes a long time. While my portfolio didn't change much from graduation to getting to Riot, the way I displayed it did. The website went under many iterations. And so I found that, you know, getting yourself into the mindset, look at your own portfolio and think, within a couple minutes, can I understand what my skills are and how to contact me? Like, is that solid or is it still unclear? And I think that's, I guess, the biggest advice that I would give for portfolios. Same with resume also.
Okay. I have one parting question. So you all students, is there something as professors that we could do differently to prepare you better for the industry as women?
That's a good question, actually.
It's a very good question.
I'm pondering one moment.
In the meantime, I think Sofia might have been trying to talk earlier. I saw her come off mute. Oh, you can't. Oh no.
I don't know what's happening. My connection has been super. Can you
We
hear
can
me?
hear you now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Because my connection
talk
has
while
been
we ponder.
super spotty this entire time, and I kept losing the conversation. So I was just along for the ride for a lot of this.
Well, it is recorded, so you will be able to come back and complete the blanks.
Fantastic.
I think I maybe have two pieces of advice, though. I think my first bit of advice, and this isn't specifically to you, this is more like what I've heard from like many professors and experience with many professors, is to just, I think it's good to teach about the realities of the industry. I don't necessarily think it needs to be in such a way that they are upheld. And I'm not naming any specific like instance or any specific professor. So don't I'm not trying to be mean. But I do know I've heard like some professors, like students were like, I had to sleep under my desk to finish my assignment, or I was crunching for 3 days. And I did this too. And like, quite frankly, it's just because I was slow when I was in school. But like I've heard some professors, like, they're like proud of this, right? They're like, I was like living in the office for 2 months, and I just don't think this is how it has to be. Like, and anyone who's like ready to change that in the games industry, because it definitely has been changing like a lot, and I think we just need to continue that and not like uphold that we must crunch or we must hurt ourselves in order to get this game out. Like, we games industry can do better, and let's try to make it better, right? And I guess the second advice is, which I heard from, oh goodness, I forget his name. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna remember you immediately after this, but he also mentioned that like when you're taking advice from literally anybody, know that like basically the advice you're being given is going to get you closer to where they are. I guess this is more students taking in like any advice from professors. So if you talk to like Jack Mamias, he's a AAA guy, right? So any of his advice is going to be AAA. Whereas talk to Cyril, and Cyril has a lot more experience in like smaller indie games, so the advice is going to go that way. So I guess that's more student advice, but my first one was for the professors. So there you go.
Awesome. And apparently I cut Sofia. So Sofia, you have the mic.
Go, Sophia, go.
Well, all I was gonna say is for when it comes to how I've been helped with your classes and Professor Wu's classes, I'm so sorry. It's gonna take some time for me to stop calling you Professor Wu.
Okay. Sophia, don't need to call me
Peer critique actually helped a lot with getting the confidence. But with getting the confidence to actually, you know, like stand my ground in conversations with my team and other people of my studio. It also helps you with learning how to be like goal-oriented when it comes all of those things. Peer critique that you guys did helped a lot, I think. And if you see behavior in the guys or anybody else that seems like it might be a little bit rude or anything, or that might be, you know, then addressing that does help, because it starts to plant the seed that this is not okay behavior once we leave here.
Yeah. No. It's a vigilance, vigilance, accountability. Anybody else?
I mean, yeah.
You were going to say something?
Yeah, I really want to piggyback. Oh, sorry.
Finish this.
Sorry,
I can
sorry,
I'll remember you. But essentially, I really want to piggyback of what you just said, Sophia, which was, I think that college does a really good job of honing your artistic skills. But I think one thing I could have learned a lot more about was like self-worth and confidence as an artist. I think that when you, I think Kelly, you said that you have to, in an interview them back. I didn't feel like as a student I had that right. I was like, thank you for your scraps. I will take them. This is all I should worry about. But in all honesty, like any kind of communication is a give and take. And you are a human being, you're a worker, like you have rights. As an artist, you have rights. And I think that teaching, obviously don't teach like students to be like completely self-entitled and demanding. But at the same time, like, no, like you do deserve to work at a company that you're happy at. Like you do deserve to learn more about the culture in an interview. And these are maybe some of the questions you can ask in an interview to sound confident and self-assured. I think that that'd be really helpful.
I'd like to add something as well. I think that I should have said this at the beginning, I forgot to. But something I always tell anyone who asks me for industry advice is to take it with a grain of salt, because I didn't. And I think not everything that I got was as applicable to me as it should have been. So there was definitely people that were like, this is how I got into the industry. Do it exactly like this. Like, you'll be great. And I would do it. And I'd feel like, I don't know if this is really helping at all. And so even if you're not in the industry, that doesn't mean that like you don't know what you're doing at all. And it's okay to trust your gut sometimes. And if something just doesn't feel like it makes any sense in terms of advice, it's okay to ignore it. Like, you don't have to like fall over your feet to copy someone's exact path into the industry, because everybody's is going to be different naturally.
Absolutely. And then the last thing I wanted to add, because my connection cut out before, has to do with what Dana mentioned earlier. I actually participated in an interview for another artist position at my studio today. And part of the whole idea of how you present your work and showing documentation of your work and being able to talk about your work and your workflow is so important. It really makes a big difference when you're interviewing for a job in any studio, whether it's a small one like we are or a big one. It can really make a difference. So it doesn't have to be the most complicated thing in the world, but just showing how you went from point A to point B, or even if you can't show it, talk about how you went from point A to point B. It can make it or break it, and it talking from experience.
Sophia, the breakdowns. Remember the breakdowns.
Breakdowns, yes, I remember. Which is why I wanted to talk about it, because one of the persons we saw today didn't have a lot of them, and then there wasn't a lot that they could show for what the position was. So it was kind of, then why should we hire you?
Yeah. I think Eric, do you have a parting question?
This is I want to ask a question about giving us advice for us students who are still in college. I'm not graduating this year, it's going to be next year, but for those that might be graduating this year, or those who now still, I think what I'm trying to say is that a lot of us are still not in a sense of urgency to kind of push ourselves to do better, to improve our work, to get ready for the industry. And Professor Wu is very advocate for us to do better, showing us what the industry wants, and it's very appreciative. And it, of course, Professor Guichard also pushes us a lot in our studio class, showing that this is what it needs to be. But there is still a sense that for us students, we're not getting that urgency to do better or improve our work before we leave, because by the time we leave, we're not coming back to redo what we did in school, because now we're into the fire. So what's your advice for us students to kind of like be able to push ourselves to do better?
Oh,
I got this. Oh, sorry, Dana, you can go right after me. One is either pick someone in your class that you think is the best and like just be like, I'm gonna be like them. Like do a silent competition thing. Like me and my friends, every class, we basically were like, who's gonna show up with the like most work put into this? And it was 100% friendly. It wasn't like ever malicious or anything like that. But I felt very driven by my friends and empowered. And if you don't have that, I think find a portfolio that you love and be like, I need to meet this level, because I think copying is completely fine. Break it, don't obviously plagiarize, but break it down. Like, okay, they have one human character, one, I don't know, creature character, they have this, and they work at this job that I want. I'm going to push myself to make work that's at this level and could fit in this person's portfolio. Like, could I put my work in between these pictures and it fits in? Very aspirational, but also very motivational. I think that if you can just find a North Star to follow, either it's the best person in your class, you want to match their work, or someone you really admire in the industry, I think that really motivated me.
My answer is not as nice. It's a little bit mean. It's if you want it enough, you will. It just depends when. You can do it now while you're in school and you have all the time in the world. You can do it when you're graduated and you are balancing trying to get a job with improving your portfolio, or you can not get a job in games. So the thing is like, if you continue to improve your portfolio, you'll get into the industry if you keep trying. It'll happen. And a lot of people don't even go to college for games, and they get in because they do great work on their own, and it's awesome. I'd recommend doing it now if you can kick your ass in gear. And the reason is, if you're gonna be, job hunting for 6 months minimum, which is very likely in this economy, you're going to lose steam. You're going to lose just like any kind of self-esteem that you have. It's going to be tiring, and it's really hard to create and enjoy what you do on top of that. So I would recommend do it now instead of later. at least start working on like pushing yourself and getting the pieces that you feel very proud of into your portfolio. Doesn't mean you have to have everything by the time you graduate, obviously. But just think of it as doing your future self a favor, because job hunting is hard enough without having to make a portfolio at the same time.
Did want to add a little bit. The industry sucks right now, is bad. So like I said, I'm laid off. I'm freelancing right now, so please, like, if you're having trouble, be kind to yourself. It's not great for a lot of people right now. So I think it's going to get better, because it's like these companies have to make content. They can't just sit there on skeleton crews and not do anything. So they're gonna have to hire up again. But be nice to yourself. But my advice is, like, I think people were saying it's kind of like everyone on a visa found a job first just because they had to, so like even if you're not motivated now, like, do you want to live in your parents' house forever on their dime? I didn't, and it took me like a year after graduating to find like a job that was able to sustain myself. But now I have my own house and I have a doggy, like that's pretty cool. So like even if like you're not feeling motivated right now, life might motivate you in that you're like, man, I sure would like my own bathroom, So yep, it'll come probably. Yeah.
I kind of want to springboard off of what Sophia said in the chat, and kind of having she mentioned having a goal point does a lot for the progression of work and art, and I 100% agree with that. I think it's really easy to have a subject matter goal for your artwork, kind of like what Monica was talking about with the portfolio. I think what's also incredibly beneficial is having a skill goal. Like pick a particular skill that you don't think that you think you're very good at, and then just tailor your project to better yourself at that skill, instead of trying to like find a project you really want to work on that has this gigantic umbrella of skills, because you'll also find that like working on a specific skill is going to translate a lot more than spreading yourself super thin and trying to work on all of these skills for this one specific character that you want to do, or this one specific environment that you want to do. Focus on the building blocks, the small stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, very, very much, everybody, for spending 2 hours with us and for agreeing to tape it. That way, it's the gift that will keep on giving. I will post the link. Usually, Zoom takes about 24 hours to 48 hours to kind of like compile the stuff. I will post the link when it's available. What I will do is I will post it to you guys first, just so that you double check that everything is cool. And if everything is cool, then I will post the link on the rest of the Discord for the students that unfortunately missed the talk, to kind of like go back and learn what you have to say. Awesome. Thank you very much, and it's super exciting to see you guys. Well, maybe at some point we'll meet again at GDC or Seattle this summer is still an option. And of course, if you come to Savannah, please let us know. We'll take you out.
Absolutely.
Or drink. Celeste, do you have anything that you want to wrap up?
I just want to say I feel so optimistic knowing that you all are in the industry and have such wonderful things to say and to hear. I mean, I know that there are always obstacles to navigate, but a lot of your contributions have been, presenting a good work culture. I mean, obviously, sometimes you aren't in one and then you switch and you try to find one, but it's, obviously, I'm sure that all the professors here will agree that's what we want. We want to know that you're doing what you're passionate about, and and that you have a dog. That's always good too.
Talking about that, I know that there are like various. There was another talk last week on the same topic. I think that there are various clubs that are kind of in the process of being made. Oh, look at the doggy. Oh, beautiful eyes. It's a good boy or girl. I don't know. I think it's a boy, right?
Yes, he's just a pretty boy.
So I know that they are actually creating some clubs for women in gaming. There are various clubs that are kind of like sprouting. Stay alert on Discord. I will post them when they come into action. Okay, thank you very much.
Is
Two different-
GDN still a thing? I was in GDN when I was in.
Of course. Well,
Yay!
that's where we met, Sana and I.
Yeah.
I was never your professor, but we met at GDN.
Did you say you were going to Seattle this summer?
I'm planning to, yes.
Okay.
For
I was
for
also
Unreal
planning
Fest?
to do
I-
Seattle because we're opening a new office. I was gonna hang out and say hi,
Ooh,
but I don't know what time, so maybe we can
we-
coincide.
I'm kind of flexible. I worked a lot with Meta, and I wanted to kind of like swing by. The people I work with are in Seattle, so we'll coordinate offline. And I'm sure that would be fun to kind of like see you guys again. Thank you so much, everybody, again. Let's do that again at some point in the future and kind of like check tabs when you are all CEOs, CFOs, COOs, and all the chief executive stuff. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Migo, for being with us. Thank you, all the students that came. Thank you, Celeste, for agreeing to moderate the debate, and thank you, obviously, to our alumni for kind of sharing their bits of wisdom. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.